Today gonna be doing a valve cover gasket swap on my IS300 as well as some spark plugs. So let's get to it. You got a intake gasket for part of the plenum there for this area. The intake and exhaust valve cover gaskets. Some new spark plugs, NGK Iridiums. There's the part number if you're interested. Some good old ultra black. Gray works too, just to seal up some of the corners on the valve cover. And then a little bit of dielectric. So I already have the main cover off here for the camshaft pulleys. And then an aftermarket short ram intake. But yeah, you'll want to pull these covers off here. If you have the factory box, I would just pull the hose from this area to this area, then obviously disconnect your MAF sensor and also pull your PCV hose off here. Also, don't be that guy. Disconnect your battery terminals before you begin. It will erase your keep alive memory, so you might notice that it'll drive differently once you get the job done and reconnect it, but it should come back to normal, you know, within a day or two. We have removed the intake, and now what we need to do is remove the throttle body and this portion of the plenum. You're gonna need to disconnect the throttle cable. You'll need to either disconnect the bracket or do the adjustment there. I like to do the bracket just because I don't have to mess with adjusting the cable again when I reassemble. This connector here, the connector going to the motor, this connector for the throttle position sensor. Then you have a vacuum line here to disconnect. You have a PCV hose here to disconnect. A small coolant line here to disconnect. And don't be concerned if it leaks at all, it'll drip a little bit. And then you'll need to pull off this little hold down here, also this one. So let's get everything disconnected. Those of you who haven't encountered these type of harness holders before, you just put your little flathead behind this tab here, and then it should just come right off that bracket. One more that I forgot to mention, you also got this heater hose back here that'll have some stuff in it. But yeah, just tuck that off to the side. You also got the connector on that little solenoid back there. And also, underneath that connector, you have a little vacuum line attached to this guy that you want to pull off, like so. So another one that is very difficult to see is that little guy, not this one, but the one past it there. That one is connected going in this way into an elbow. You'll need to disconnect that as well before removing this portion of the plenum. Now that you have everything disconnected, you're gonna start by removing the two nuts underneath here, which are both 12 millimeters, one on each side. And then you have 6 total fasteners, 2 nuts and 4 bolts on this guy. So one here, one there, one here, and also one in the same place down here in the back side. We've removed the throttle body as well as that portion of intake plenum. You'll notice that you'll probably have some oil built up inside of this manifold. I'd highly recommend wiping it out. You can use a light amount of brake cleaner. You don't want to fill it because you'll have fluid leak down into your cylinders and that can be bad business. But you know, get some rags, clean out as best you can in there, and then after you have it cleaned, I would stuff these ports to keep any dirt and debris from getting inside of the engine. I imagine if most of you are doing this, you've already purchased another one of these, but for the record, if you did plan on reusing this is a one-time use steel gasket. So after it's torqued one time, it no longer has that crush anymore. So you have an opportunity for air leaks should you be reusing this gasket. So if you don't have one now, I'd highly recommend running and getting one before you're done. So now we will be removing the ignition coils and spark plug wires, a series of connectors, as well as just basic pull version spark plugs wires. And these are all 10 millimeters that are retaining these 3 ignition coils down. So we'll remove those and head to the next step. Another thing to note specifically for this, and actually a lot of other vehicles, but these connectors here that go onto the ignition coils, as you can see, the tab's already busted off of this one, but they tend to break very easily because this is a high heat area in the engine. So when you're removing all of these, pay close attention to where the wires are routed to. Ignition coil pack on the 2nd spark plug to the 5th plug. The one on the 4th spark plug, this guy jumps up to the 3rd, and then you have one on the 6th spark plug, which hops all the way back up to the 1st. I'd also label your ignition coils if you can. Alright, so now we have our spark plug valley fully exposed. What you're going to do is use your brake cleaner or whatever your preferred degreaser is, engine degreaser, something. You're going to clean out all the oil, debris, whatever you may have in this valley before removing the spark plugs. And then you will use a vacuum to suck out all the stuff. And I would be very diligent about cleaning material out of the holes for the spark plugs. So we got it all cleaned up in there. As you can see, the main thing really is just getting the loose dirt and debris. You don't have to be incredibly thorough. I prefer to, just because, you know, you're already there, so just take the time to clean it up, make it look nice. Then if you ever have any leaks in the future, they're a lot easier to track. Then you're gonna pull out the spark plugs. It's always good to inspect your spark plugs after you take them out. See if there's anything else going on with the engine. A little bit discolored from the rich fuel condition, but nothing alarming. A little bit of oil. It's part of the reason we're doing this cover gasket. Always double check your gap with new spark plugs. Even if they say they're pre-gapped, sometimes they can be real messed up. Our specification for this car is between 43 and 47 thousandths, so just double check those with your spark gap tool. Another good practice is to put a little bit of dielectric, just a tiny bit, inside of the ignition coil boots as well as the spark plug wire boots, just to help with continuity. After you've installed all your spark plugs, you're going to use your torque wrench and you're going to torque them to 16 foot-pounds each. Got some of the finest help I could ask for. So we're pulling all the valve cover bolts off from the front to the back. So we have the valve covers removed. Place them over here. I'm gonna do some thorough cleaning. Yeah, you don't want to get any debris in there. Dirt, dust, nothing. So be very careful around this. So what you're gonna do is clean this surface here, the mating surface for the gasket, very thoroughly with some brake cleaner or engine degreaser, whatever you choose, and some paper towels. And then be careful not to push any of the grime and junk into these valleys here where the cams are. Have our valve cover gaskets installed. Looking good. You're gonna wanna add about a pea-sized dab of that, your gasket maker, gray or black, whatever you choose, right in this corner and also that corner. And same thing on the other side, right there and right there. After your valve covers are installed, you're going to want to torque all your fasteners from center out to 75 inch-pounds. After you've torqued the covers in place, then the reassembly is the same as the disassembly, just reverse order obviously. And you're going to torque these guys up to 30 foot-pounds on here. And then the rest, no torque value is really necessary. No other critical mating surfaces to be fastened. Last thing to note about the reassembly is this gasket here. Make sure that the little additional tab is down here in the front corner. And then your ridge should be coming out this way. Alrighty, so now that everything's together, don't forget to reconnect your battery, obviously. You should be ready to start and go. Only a few things that I would watch out for after everything's going is, you know, checking along these areas here after your first day or so of driving, all around the edges and even inside the valley if you can get any looks into there for leaks. A very common area is this front corner here. It'll actually leak down onto this and a whole bunch of other things, and it looks a lot like a cam seal leak. Should you done everything right, it should start up perfectly fine. Always double check your vacuum hoses, especially around here on the back, also the one underneath the plenum. Those guys are important, and also don't forget the heater hose at the back of the throttle body. Otherwise you'll have a bit of a mess. You can barely see it, but we have some smoke coming from over here. All that is just some of the coolant and stuff that was used. So if you're getting smoke from the exhaust side of your engine after you start it up the first time, don't even worry about it. Well guys, I hope this video was useful for you and you got yourself a nice running IS300 with a new valve cover gasket and maybe even new plugs. Should you have any questions, let me know in the comments or message me directly. I'll always answer. And anyways, have a good one, guys. Catch you next time.